Hey, hier.
Okay.
Komm doch mit. Hey, just get a chair. Get anything where you can sit on. So we are live.
Yeah.
There's room.
Wir haben Platz.
Oh, mein Handy. Das lädt. Ich wäre gar keine, um Fragen zu lesen.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Somebody should take the mobile.
Du kannst mir meins geben, vielleicht hast du schon geladen ein bisschen.
Ich gucke.
Oh, krank.
Okay, Tom.
Is this where I'll take our phones out?
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
to. The problem
just
is...
for the live chat.
Right.
So you can answer questions.
So that we can chat on the. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Somebody liked
So
it.
actually, I do need to take my phone out.
Guck mal,
Yeah.
ich sehe so fett aus, wie ich hier gerade sitze.
Wow.
Hilft auch der Freestyler nicht.
Doch, doch, doch.
Okay.
So eine Wampe.
Nee, das ist so eine große linke Brust.
Ja, auch. Also es ist irgendwie ganz wild, wie ich da. Aber Jetzt sieht genauso hässlich aus. Also wir sind gleich.
I don't have any idea what he just said.
No, I was like,
Gurkentag.
yeah. So, einen wunderschönen guten Tag.
That means like a pickle or a cucumber.
You're just telling that you are the cutest guy in the photo.
Wow, someone's already hitting on me in the chat. Wow.
Don't know who that would be.
Eric.
So, einen wunderschönen guten Tag. Live 2 Tage, 3 Tage nach dem Season Opening.
Ja.
Yeah. So first of all, how is the impression actually about Germany? At the
Germany.
moment, yeah, like you saw some stuff of you went to England before.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how you would compare it, like just from the trip which you're doing?
I've never been to Germany before.
Yeah.
I've just been so blown away by how beautiful it is. Like the cities, the roads, everything is just gorgeous. Everything's so in order.
Yeah.
Like the way people drive, except when Eric drives on the wrong side of the road.
Only once.
Other than that,
It
it's
was
very,
a one-way street.
very orderly. We don't have to tell the story, but
I had to defend myself.
we still need to be able to drive the van, so you don't want to tell the story. It's incredible. And we also had the best first impression because coming to the season opener and meeting all of these wonderful people, they were so nice. They were so kind. I'm blown away by how good everyone's English is, which is good for me because otherwise I would just be sitting here doing this all day.
Yeah, I think English came the last 10 years way more popular than it was before.
Yeah.
So,
But like the quality of your customers' builds, everything's just been. I expected this to be cool and impressive
Yeah.
and fun, but it has far exceeded expectations. Really, really cool.
Eric,
I mean, I love
except
it
that
here.
they signed a hood.
I signed a hood. I don't think these people realize that I'm not important yet, but they're gonna find out the longer they watch.
Not important yet. It's like
No, I mean, I lived here, so like for me, it means a lot to be back. A lot has changed since the last time I was here, but in a lot of ways for the better. I think people are a little bit more open now than they used to be, and so it's been really nice just to quickly get to know everybody, and just it feels like just one big family. And it's been perfect weather. It's beautiful here, especially in this part of Germany. We don't have anything like this. On our way to our hotel, we discovered what we've now named the Swiss Alps, a small twisty road through the forest.
yeah.
You just don't get roads like that easily in the U.S. and it's these fucking workwear that you guys have that everybody just does so much better. Your roads are just so well done, and it's got to be because you guys are so well dressed. They're not wearing jeans and t-shirts with holes in them.
Like the question from Stefan was good. Like, how do you call your work pants? Work pants? That's it.
Arbeitskleidung, no?
Yeah, but you don't have something like this in the States.
No, we wear fucking jeans and a
Carhartt.
ripped
No,
t-shirt.
what is
Yeah,
that?
Carhartt.
Dickies.
Dickies too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what about cargo pants?
Yeah, there's Dickies and Carhartt.
Yeah, but it's not like it's not as like this. Like it's like high tech here. People like have reflectors and massive pockets. Like look at that.
I mean, Leonard's pants too. Like
Like
This is just fashion.
You got a pocket for your ruler.
Yeah, but this is fashion. This is fashion for workers. It's called Strauss.
Yeah, look, it's got a ruler pocket.
With a ruler in it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like
That's
we,
kinda nice.
so all the roads have been super. Like the road surface here are perfect.
People move over when you come behind them in the fast
And
lane.
if they don't, you get to ride on their tail, and it's not rude.
You bully them out of the fast lane.
You know,
if
in
they
the
don't.
U.S., that's rude. Here, it's just like, what are you doing? Get out of the way. I love it.
It's awesome. It's been really great.
But yeah, the quality of the cars, the builds here have
And the
been
bakeries.
incredible.
Emilio's in.
Yeah, Emilio thinks Eric is also very hot right now.
Yeah.
Yes. Man, where the chat is popping off
Yeah.
on my appearance. I'm feeling a little objectified. And I started it.
You'll get over it.
I started
That's nice. So, yeah, you saw, I think we will see a lot of videos about the season opener, so I do not want to get into it too deep, but, and I told it about 100 times before, this season opener blowed me away. So this is like, when you are thinking about how many people were here, how many cars there were here, and how many people just talked to you guys. This was something I was a bit afraid of, that they are shy to go to you, but I think they were completely open. They just went to you and just looking at the stuff. And I think all this little, let's say, puzzle pieces went nicely together and just made this one day perfect. So yeah, we told it already on Instagram. So thank you for all the people which were here. But we also have an interesting part is that, let's say, Fly Miata is also making turbo kits and stuff. So it's not that interesting for us to sell turbo kits also in Germany, because we have different emission stuff, what they are dealing with. It's more interesting that we talk, let's say, on the same kind of knowledge, which is really interesting for me, or which was interesting for me, and it's still, because, yeah, I talked to Mike several times about these things. Stefan is building engines, like we are doing. But on one side, I think we are not that good as you. And this when it comes down to suspension and handling stuff. And it was really impressive when we were yesterday. We're sitting and eating, and we were just talking about some suspension stuff, and you said, yeah, you have to do it like this and do it like this, and you have to make your shock like this and whatever. And I really felt that, okay, yeah, we have suspensions and we probably know to set them up correctly, but our R&D is more always focused on, let's make a big amount of power and let's make it reliable. And the handling part always comes a bit behind us. So we say, okay, we use this tire and then we swap out the springs or whatever. But basically, we never did like a really great re-welving on a damper. And this is like impressive for me, what you said, hey, we can probably get rid of the ice mode in the ND when we would set up the suspension a bit different.
Maybe.
Or we could do this and this and this. And this kind of impressed me. And I had it in mind to say, okay, this is probably a product we can add to our products, but I think basically the Tecna and the Zeta things for our cars, I think they make them perfect.
I kind of see the same thing. Like, I see one of the things that I mentioned that blew me away was the quality of the builds.
Yeah.
You know, we have some nice builds in the U.S., but the builds that were at the season opener just blew my mind. Like, they were so beautiful. The attention to detail was incredible. Your customers have built the nicest Miatas I've ever seen, and they're all on what we see as more basic suspension.
Yeah.
You know, none of them had great suspension.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're great. They drive fine. You know, they're good cars, but there is another level available. And, you know, at the season opener, I was thinking, like, you know, I haven't driven a lot of those suspension setups, right? So I've driven a few cars, but I haven't driven a lot of them. But then when we had the chance to go drive the Nürburgring the next day, the cars were a blast to drive. But after driving them and on the rough pavement, I realized how much more opportunity there is for improvement. Because the cars handled great, but, you know, certain behavior over certain bumps and stuff, I was like, okay, there is room for improvement that will allow for a more comfortable ride, but also a much faster ride. Especially on bumpy tracks. You know, you got your time attack car that's set up with no suspension travel, tons of aero. That's how time attack cars are. You know, that probably stands to gain less. But when you have a dual duty car that's wanting to go turn ring laps and drive to the grocery store and whatever, there's definitely room for. And so seeing the quality of those builds compared to the quality of the suspension, there's an opportunity to bring the quality of the suspension up to par with the rest of the car. And I think there's just a lot to be gained by doing that.
So when you talk about the Zetas, are they like 2 ways adjustable?
They're single adjustable.
Okay.
Part of the reason why we do that is the point of the Zeta is to bring a shock that, I guess, kind of taking a step back. You mentioned the suspension revalve.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys will want to go and get a custom valve set of shocks,
Yeah.
right? And that's great. You talk to a suspension builder, he's going to put together some shocks based on what you want out of the car. You're going to get the shocks. They probably are going to work pretty good, right? But that's just the first step. A lot of people stop there. In order to really get a good set of shocks, you got to take those shocks, drive them. Hopefully you're able, as a driver, as an owner, to feel what the car is doing, communicate that back to the guy that built your shocks. Then you're going to send the shocks back in for refinements. And really, to get a good set of shocks, you have to be able to give really good feedback, and you got to go through that process 3, 4, 5, 6 times until the shocks are where you want them. What we did with Zetas is we went through that process for our customers. Most people, that's so expensive, right? To go through that process 5 or 6 times is thousands and thousands of dollars or euros. And so time consuming. Taking the shocks on and off the car, your car's not working while they're getting revalved. So the whole point of Zetas was to make that more accessible to more people. So we go through the tuning, and then we buy a whole bunch of them, and then you can just click a button and order them. And you're going to get something that has the same level of development as if you'd gone back and forth with your suspension tuner 8 times. Because that's what we did to develop them. And we have 2 pro-level drivers, and Emilio is like the Rain Man of car dynamics. He'll get in a car and he can say, okay, make these adjustments, make those adjustments. He's very sensitive in his ability to see and feel what a car needs. And I'm trying to learn a lot of that from him. And by doing that, he can really carefully communicate with the builders to get the shocks you want. So coming back to the single adjustable thing, part of making that accessible is also making them easy to set up. So once you get those shocks, you put them on your car. If you have more than one knob, it's hard. It's hard because you have to know what to turn, which knob to turn to correct the behavior that you're feeling. By having just one knob, it's really easy to guide
The
people.
sound is probably, it's not good. Somebody told me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What about the sound? It's not high enough?
Do we have bad
Yeah.
sound?
It's not loud enough?
Yeah.
Probably because I'm looking that way and here's the microphone.
No, but there's this
they
one.
have 2 microphones.
This is just Eric's,
No, this
Yeah.
should normally
but
work.
he's not talking.
I'm not allowed to.
Yeah, better than.
Der Michael hat mir geschrieben per WhatsApp.
I'm also live on OnlyFans if anyone wants to watch there.
Is it working?
I'm not good at cars, but I have other skills.
Yeah, you have other skills, yeah. And you're still
Yeah, you
searching.
sent some feet pics earlier today.
I did. I
Yeah?
saw a sign at the castle that said "Send feet pics,"
Ah,
so I took a picture with it.
nice.
We'll do an SPS collab, maybe.
Vega XT.
That's Sunny.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, Sunny and Emilio are. I
Already.
gave him a heads up.
They're making sure we're working right now.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna tell them we want our vacation days back because we've been working so hard.
Yeah.
Tell them really how much work we've been doing that way.
Just don't tell them how many beers I drank since I've been
Okay.
here.
So,
So anyway, the single adjustable makes it a lot easier to set up.
Okay, you should directly speak to the mic.
Is that better? I don't see any messages saying anything.
Yeah.
There's probably
Yeah,
someone
but
maybe texting him.
then nobody
Then nobody can hear you.
Answer
What about
this.
right here?
This is no.
Okay, we do it here.
I'll turn them up here.
Okay.
That's okay.
So when we come back to the point that you say we do single valving, so you just made it easy for an amateur guy to set up the damper perfectly.
But it's not just easy for amateurs. I mean, we have 3-way adjustable Zetas, but we run those single adjustables ourselves when we're racing, or when we're doing events. Like, because we've gone in and done all the homework, when we make it makes it simpler for us because we know that the valving is set each click. Emilio has basically mapped out each click to be where he wants the reval, where he wants the damping,
The high and low speed
the high low
compression,
speed
rebound,
compression,
all
and
that
rebound.
stuff.
My brain is too much German this week. I can't think of any words in English or German. I've been broken. But we use our single adjustables.
Yeah. We do offer triples for those that want them.
Did you went time attack with your suspension, so with the Cetas,
Mhm.
as you would sell them now to us?
Correct.
They were
Yes.
off the shelf Zeta singles.
Okay.
Singles.
Okay,
Not
because
even-
like you said like you have big arrow and on the time attack car you don't need any suspension travel or you don't have something.
Well,
Is it-
on that car, that time attack car we did.
Yeah.
Because that time attack car was running at Button Willow Raceway Park.
Yeah.
The fast line requires that you literally jump a car over a curb,
Yeah.
and there's some really bumpy sections. So for that track, doesn't matter what car you have, that track it is very advantageous to have suspension that works really, really well.
Okay.
That actually has some travel.
I mean, Ryan on Hypermiata is also is using Zetas, the same ones that we would have,
Yeah, he's on
used.
triples, but
He's on.
yeah.
Ryan is the
because
kind of
Ryan's the kind of guy that wants to dial.
We
everything
tell
in
customers when
individually.
they reach out that they want triples, that triples are really for people who love to tinker, not for people, it's not necessarily going to make you faster.
Emilio explained it
Yeah.
in one sentence.
I mean, he did invent them, so he might know. A little
Yeah, I
bit.
mean, Emilio says so. Zeta singles have 80 possible adjustment options. Triples have a few 100,000. It's too difficult for the average person to get dialed in. And our singles are valved like a three-way. So that was what Eric was getting at. Is that as you go from soft to firm in a triple, you're not gonna adjust all of your clickers the same amount. Most of the way through the damping curve, you're gonna dial in your high-speed compression, get that figured out, and then you're gonna dial in your low-speed compression and your rebound. And the rebound is what you're going to change through most of the damping sweep. But as you get up into the higher, stiffer settings, you might start adding a little more low speed compression or even a little bit more high speed compression if you're adjusting triple adjustables. So what we did with our singles is that when you're at the soft settings, it's just adjusting rebound. As you adjust them stiffer, as you get to the stiffer end, the clicks start adding some high speed compression, some low speed compression. So it does what you would do if you were adjusting triples.
Okay.
So that's the other part of it, is it's not, with many shocks, when you adjust the knob, it's just rebound. With ours, it's either just rebound or it's rebound and compression together in lockstep. And you don't want that either, because that's not how you would adjust shocks. So with ours, it is tuned so that each click, depending on where it is in the damping range, it's adjusting different things, even on the single adjustables.
It's like every time you make a click, it's like you already called Emilio and got his recommendation, which is a lifesaver for most people, myself included.
It just makes it super easy to set them up.
You
And-
run on your car Cetas.
Maybe. Okay, to be fair, my car is like negative $500. I've made money on this car, and so I'm running.
Eric's car is a meme.
My car is a meme.
Yeah, Eric's car is like a driving shit. No, it's not a shitbox.
I mean,
It is a shitbox. What
It
else?
has anime angry eye tape, made in blue
If
tape
I
on
would,
the
if
headlight
I
covers.
would paint my
Like, it's-
trash can down there red.
That would be my car.
Yes.
And some black and a little blue.
Yes.
And put some stickers on it.
Yeah. And
Um,
and it's just missing the sign which says Butner. That's the only part.
What we've always told people is if you can't budget for Zetas, because they are more expensive than some of the typical cheaper two-piece coilovers, what we have recommended in the past is to run what we call DIY Bilsteins, which is Bilsteins with a sleeve to allow you to run a normal like 2 1/4, 2 1/2 spring, and you can adjust the ride height. And so before I worked for 949 Racing, before I knew better, I got a
Mustang.
really good deal. Yes, that too. I
Yeah,
got a Mustang.
I helped him find these spec.
We
Miata
found some
Bilsteins
Spec Miata
at the mall.
takeoffs. So, and then once I worked at 949 Racing, we got the ride height dialed. We got the rake dialed. Sonny helped me do a corner balance. We added helper springs. And the goal is on this car is to go as fast as you can, possibly under 2 minutes at Button Willow, in a car that basically costs no money. And it feels like cheating if I just take all the parts from 949 Racing and use my employee discount and put them on the car. And so what we've been trying to do is make for fun, just make a car that like a Greg Peters build, but ghetto. Like that normal people could do. If they wanted to, we're literally, the expression is polishing a turd. You're taking a piece of shit and making it shiny, and that's what we're doing.
So
for fun.
There's a really good question in the comments. Can I
Yeah,
answer that
of
question?
course.
So flat ride, I get that question a lot. So flat ride is a ride frequency thing. It is important for ride. It is not necessarily as important for performance. So you'll find that on some of our, like our 6.4 spring rates on Tecna GTs, that is a street car. 6.4 is really close to flat ride. Like that's a really good ride frequency for comfort. However, what we find is as you increase the performance of your car, especially on Miatas, you need to shift the spring rate balance further forward. And so with Tecnas, with Tecna GTs, we take flat ride into account. With Zetas, we take lap times into account, and that doesn't always match with flat ride.
What does flat ride mean? It's like that you can ride smoothly.
Kind of. I don't actually. That's more of a John and Emilio question, but it's
Okay.
so
Emilio.
okay.
Oh,
Emilio, yay! Thanks, Emilio. You want to read it?
Yeah, you can read it. It's like you took.
I've been
all the
talking a
time.
lot. You read it, Eric.
Okay, so it says flat ride is a buzzword. Okay for ride quality on the street, but has no use in a competition driving environment. Tuning just for flat ride while ignoring pitch, roll, transient, roll response doesn't work. Which Emilio has more driving experience than almost anybody else on the planet in a Miata in a competition environment. At least also from a manufacturing and a valving side. So you can definitely trust him on this one. If you want a good street ride,
I would not sit here with you guys both here and say I'm considering to get rid of suspensions, which I have, because we are selling our own suspensions. And I would say these are, for 85% of our customers, good. But for 15% of the customers, I see a Zeta. And especially for my own cars. And like mentioned, I know how to set up a suspension. And I think I get a really good friend of mine, where I was racing with in the past, I was asking him, hey, are you happy with the suspension in your car? And he said, I don't give a fuck, just drive the fuck out of the car. So this is like basically the same what I do. It's like when you would ask me, is your tire pressure 0.2 too high? I say, I don't care because I just drive it.
Mm-hmm.
And when the car starts to drive a bit different, I adjust my driving style. So this is actually what I do. And on the end of the day, I never click the damper on a track. I just say, okay, I just want to do this kind of, let's say, performance. And because I'm not the guy who's just feeling that, but basically, I was sitting in the pit and I was just touching my gas pedal on my blue car, and I said, I think my exhaust is leaking on the runner of the header. So this is something where I'm good at.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to get in Germany somebody who's good in dialing in suspension in Miatas, there is nobody, because nobody's actually taking care about these cars like we do. So to sit with you guys here and talk about this, it just probably takes our cars to a next level.
the Europeans have not perfected, but the shock technology here in terms of the quality of the dampers, the technology behind the dampers in the Netherlands and Sweden and Germany are next level. The difficulty is that the Miata is a small niche market. It feels like a big deal for us because we're in it and we're living it. But, we're small fish. Zetas cost $2,500 for an NAMB. That's like one corner of a BMW. And that's like what it costs you to get a flat repaired on a Porsche GT3 RS. So nobody wants to spend the time to dial those in. And it takes somebody like Emilio or what Goodwin Racing has done on the NC, on their new Conies, to dial in taking these off-the-shelf parts, which we use Tractive because it's some of the best that Europe has to offer, and we're taking the time to dial it in with somebody who has racing experience as a multinational champion. We have Sonny as well. Sonny has coached me, and it's changed my life. Ed, when I first started tracking, I was horrible. I sat with Ed, I got 10 seconds faster. Then I sit with Sonny and I get another 10 seconds faster. It's like to knock 20 seconds off your time being...
Sonny isn't 10 seconds faster than me, for the record.
Who's next? Who's this?
Neo Cattleboy, that's Manny. Hi, Manny.
So, it feels like a match made in heaven to be taking the expertise that you guys have with the engine builds to make a ton of power, the quality that you guys have done. You're the only people on the planet who can get things through TUV, and then pairing it with some of the suspension expertise, because the Americans have been doing Miata racing almost longer than anybody else.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
recognize what we're good at, what we're not good at. We don't build shocks. We tune shocks. So we rely on the experts at Tractive to build what we want. So we haven't built something, we drive it, we tune it, and until we're happy with it. And that's, it's resulted in a product that we're really proud of. And it works really, really well. Of all of the things that we sell, the thing that we have the best feedback on, and this kind of comes back to what you were saying, where you're like, I don't know what to change, I don't know what I need, but you'll know when you drive something that's good. And it's the same as, people will say, I'm not an experienced driver, I don't know how to tune a car, so I shouldn't buy high level suspension. And that's completely backwards, because if you're a really great driver and a great tuner, you can take shitty suspension and you can go really fast, because if the car kicks out some weird way, you know how to catch it. If you're a more average level driver like myself, like Sonny, the first time I rode with Sonny on track was in our GT86 with the stock shocks and RCE yellows on 17x9s with fat Hoosiers on it. And that thing through bus stop at Button Willow, the first time we hit bus stop, I thought we were crashing. And I was like, wow, that must have been an accident. Sonny must not have meant to do that. And then the next lap, he did the same thing. And the next lap, he did the same thing. The first time that car would have done that with me driving, I'd have pulled off the track. I would have been just done. But Sonny could drive around it and set lap records with it. But for me, when we put Zetas on that car, I could take that same line. But with those shocks, I sure as hell couldn't. So if you're not a high-level driver, you will see the benefit of good shocks way better than if you're a pro-level driver, because those guys can drive around anything, but I can't. So it makes it a lot easier to set up.
So, I know when I saw some videos of Emilio when it comes down to the Lego Technic thing. So basically we discussed this always from the backwards. So how much travel do you get out of the suspension, and how do you know out of your head how much travel you have, like both ways with your suspensions?
So like NA and B Zeta, the rear dampers are 103 millimeter of damper stroke. That's going to vary on wheel travel. But so a lot of people will ask us, well, how do you set it up in relation to, preserving this much droop travel versus this much bump travel? And that is a great question if you have very, very, very little travel. Mm-hmm. But think of it this way. If you've got a shock with this much travel, then you got to make sure that your ride height is about right here, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got this much bump available, this much droop available. Now, if your shock has this much travel, then anywhere you are between here and here, you've got both more bump available and more droop available. So it becomes less of an issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what we try to do with Zeta. So a lot of the popular like BC rear shocks, I think they have 76 millimeters of stroke. We have 103. So that gives you a much wider range that you can set the car up without having to worry about like your bump to droop ratio.
How you set up your cars? Are they straight or like this?
We usually set them up with a very small amount of rake.
Yeah.
Usually we're between 0 and 1/8 of an inch of rake. Sometimes up to 1/4 of an inch. But generally what we'll do is if we're at the track and we're adding rake and the car is still too tight, because generally when you add rake, the car will become more loose.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is if we're finding we have to dial in more than 1/8 of an inch, we'll make a hardware change. So we'll either change the sway bar setting, change damping settings, change spring rates, whatever, reset it to 0 rake, and retest. So we generally will try to keep it roughly 0 rake up to 1/8 of an inch of rake on NA and B most of the time.
So, what do you think about how the is it axles?
Control arms?
Yeah. How you set them up? They're completely straight, or because then the MX-5 is pretty high.
Yeah. So no. There's a balance to be had there. Emilio's talked a lot about this in his vehicle dynamics classes that he did at Miata's at the Gap, which was a lot of fun. Lowering a car lowers the center of gravity, right, which improves response. However, the roll center drops faster than the center of gravity when you lower a car, and that's a result of your control arm angles. We don't necessarily target a specific control arm angle because at the end of the day, it's going to end up where it's going to end up for the car to go faster.
Yeah.
As you drop the car and the control arm angle becomes more severe, you need to add more roll stiffness. So you're going to have to put bigger sway bars on it and stuff like that. But the car's still faster that way than if you raise it up. Now, if you raise it up, you will have more natural roll stiffness, So, for example, if you're doing like a hill climb car where you've got issues with, tires lifting, you've got really bumpy tracks, that sort of thing, it might be more beneficial to run the car higher, especially if you're at lower speeds. Uh, things like at autocross where transitional response is more important than pretty much anything. You might slam the car to keep the center of gravity really low and run gigantic sway bars. So a lot of it depends on what you're doing, but measuring the control arm angle isn't really something that we measure because there's just not a lot you can do about it short of going to drop spindles or something like that. There's not a whole lot of roll center correction options that work with stock Miata suspension components. There's a lot of aftermarket components out there that you can go and experiment with, but we've had really good results using just the stock control arms and subframes, running the car at the ride height that is needed to get, whatever ground clearance we need or the splitter height we need or whatever, and just kind of balancing that out to whatever yields the best lap times on track.
Sounds really interesting. When it comes down to the sway bar thing, which size you're running on the sway bars, or how you set up the sway bars with your suspension damper?
It depends on the build.
Yeah.
Like some of the most popular builds for Miatas in America it's kind of our cookie cutter recipe that we've built over the years, where you'll have like a front air dam, a rear wing. You're gonna have a 9 to 10 inch wheel with a 225 to 245 tire, Super 200 tire. That type of car is gonna have like a 1 1/8 inch front sway bar and a 14 millimeter rear. We will generally tune our cars with smaller rear sway bars than a lot of our competitors. That's by design, because we find that when we have those smaller rear sway bars, we can be a lot more aggressive on trail braking and a lot more aggressive on throttle for corner exit without the car coming around on you. So it helps stabilize things. A lot of the times, beginner and intermediate drivers, before they learn to trail brake, the car will understeer. And so they'll put a big giant rear sway bar on the car, which then makes it rotate. And they're like, this is set up great now. But then you can't trail brake, because as soon as you trail brake, the car comes around on you. So we generally will encourage customers to set up the car a little bit tight, because that will encourage you to learn how to trail brake. And that's going to increase your corner entry speeds and corner exit speeds so you can get on the throttle sooner.
That's really interesting. Your dampers are completely different than the dampers like a BC or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you running like basically shocks, which are, let's say, there's something what I do not like on these shocks, that you have to set up with the preload on the spring, the height of the car, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is the only thing which I do not like on these shocks. Like Lucas and me, we had like a discussion like a longer time ago about this. The good thing is you have more travel. This is what I really like on it. But on the other side, the only thing is, when you want to get to a specific ride height, you just get preload on the spring. So special to people in Germany,
Right.
Because they are coming like from backdated KW times. This is like let's call it a nightmare. You really have to screw them like hell. And then it comes to, if you want to go really low and if you want to go really high, you have always a not working suspension.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, in most cases though, adding preload isn't a problem. Like you go to any pro level race car on the planet, it doesn't have preload and ride height adjustable separately.
Yeah.
They all have, because they've sized the shocks correctly. So that's the crucial thing with a one-piece shock, is if you're not going to have that separate adjustment, they need to be designed correctly to fit the car. So with Zetas, that's why in our setup guides for our shocks, we do have very specific ride height adjustment ranges. And we test those ride height adjustment ranges, and we design our spring packs so that they work. So, for example, with Zeta Race, in the rear, if you're running a really light car and running it really low, then the helper spring will be partially extended even when the car is at static ride height. If you're running the car at the very tippy top of the ride height adjustment range and the car is on the heavy side, that helper spring might actually be at full block height, even at full droop. So it's effectively just a spacer at that point. But the point is, you have that wide adjustment range, and the shocks work well throughout that entire range. So that's one reason why all of our shocks have helper springs, because that helper spring is crucial. Yes, it's crucial for transition rate. It's crucial for maintaining grip near full droop. but it's also crucial for ride height adjustment range. So that as you add or remove preload, you don't end up with too much preload or negative preload, which is where the springs are loose in
Yeah.
the rear. Negative preload in the front is less of an issue. You've got a big sway bar. It's not really a problem, but you need to avoid negative preload in the rear. So all of our shock setups are very carefully designed so that you have a wide
your
adjustment
shocks
range.
get in every ride height setup, it got preload.
There's always some preload, yeah.
Okay.
But
because-
preload's not a bad thing.
No. I just because when it comes down to your TOE, you're not allowed to have a loose spring.
Right. Yeah.
So
So in your case, for the front Zetas, what we can do is because a lot of the time with Zeta race, the fronts do end up with negative preload. Again, if the cars run really low, it's not a problem. But if it's a TOV problem, we just put a little bit of a longer helper.
Like
So-
for example, on our NC Zetas, because we have so much travel in the rear, we're running one mainspring and two helpers on the NC rear. So we
we
have
run a higher
one-
rate helper and a low rate.
Yeah, we
helper.
have one ZRT with like a no rate helper just to fill in the extra space, and we have and help with transition rate. So it's pretty simple. Because we're running springs like Swift that have a lot more. Man, this Germany trip has really hurt my English. Like stroke, because we're using high quality race springs, we can still maintain the stroke of the damper with the spring packs that we run. So.
And that's a lot of our development time is spring packs. Spring packs take a ton of time to dial in, and that's because of the one-piece shock. But the benefits are huge because of the additional stroke
Yeah,
and stuff like
I
that.
totally. So the idea what to use is a one-piece shock. I'm totally with it. But it the ride height.
There are challenges that come from
Yeah,
that for sure.
yes.
So you can't just take your two-piece shock and make it a one-piece shock and send it out the door.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other factors that you have to take into account, and that's why that is again why we publish those ride height adjustment ranges, because many times that's not the max and min. You can wind the collar up and run above that, or you can wind the collar down and run below that. We just don't recommend it because then you're outside the design parameters of the shock.
And if you are, we can talk to you and you can help you figure out a spring pack. We do that all the time.
Yeah, there's often times where customers are doing something different, like the J swap guys that have the oil pan that hangs down below the subframe. Sorry, J swap guys, I don't know why you do that, but they'll need a different setup, so we'll come up with a custom spring pack for them and charge a little bit, but it's not a lot. So
It's like $50 and we'll spend.
I
some
know
time
for
with
two
you.
of that wouldn't really be an option. You've got to two of it with
Yeah.
specific spring packs. So options, if you go on our website for Zeta Race, there's 12 different spring options for the front and 8 for the rear. For you, we'd probably set you up with 3.
But we could
You know,
set
like
it up.
a more
Yeah,
comfort,
but
a sport,
if
and a
we
more
if we
aggressive.
test 2 or 3 different options, it's like TOE is you have to test the hardest and the softest, and everything in between is yours.
Oh, killer. Easy then.
Yeah, we can pick rates
So
that work
that's
great for
basically-
I
you
don't know
and your
anything about
goals.
tube, sorry.
Yeah. So that's basically it.
Yeah.
So there are ways to do it. So you went to Nordschleife, and this was actually the starting of our discussion. And you just told me, it's hey Jan, let's skip this into the live thing because I think it's interesting for the people. So the idea is because there is the lap time of Costas,
Mhm.
which is about
7:33, I think.
7:33.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, true.
I think Leonard got his written on the back part of his bed.
Yeah.
No,
Let's go get it on Thursday,
Yeah.
man.
But Leonard doesn't see
How
it
much more
because he
boost will your
doesn't
car
sleep. You guys don't sleep here at SPS. You just work.
Yeah.
Work. So Leonard never sees 7:33 on his bed.
So the interesting thing would be we take a set of seaters, drop it in the car, and just see how good we can go. And in the same time, and you said, this is the idea probably to get Emilio or Sonny or Bose down to us.
Well, they'll want to drive.
Yeah.
They want to be a part of the
Yeah.
party.
So
We
and
can't have
then
all
we
the
just
fun.
go down to Nordschleife and just drive the fuck out of it and just see how fast we can go with that kind of suspension setup.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really interesting to see people what a suspension setup changes. And on the other side, this is the idea for our road car drivers to say, okay, we get let's say 10 big names out of Germany or Europe, and they just change probably from something which they have from us, like a Silvers or like a BC or like a Tyne or whatever, and drop a Tecna in there and just test it if they like it, what the car is doing.
Daniel has another interesting question, I think.
I'm not sure what he means.
Okay.
Should we call
The
him?
detail of actual usable travel for a given shock length.
Is this Daniel Marshall?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like always.
Hi, Daniel.
He's always asking like this.
That guy, always asking all these questions.
Yes.
My phone didn't even get the question. It was so dumb.
So you just
Mine froze on people saying how handsome I was. The comments stopped after that.
Daniel, can you expound on your question? I don't fully understand what you mean.
Top chat and get all messages. You can adjust it.
He's probably typing, so.
Yeah. So the idea would be to take our yellow and just drop the cedars in. We will start with my blue. It's probably just because it's my car.
Yeah.
And it was like interesting because my car, when it goes through a corner, everybody says it's not driving through a corner, it's jumping. So it's always like this.
This is the car with the big NA motor?
Yeah.
Blue car?
Yeah.
Dude, that car is so sick.
Yeah. So
It is so sick. I love that car.
yeah. So everybody.
You're gonna have to put the right size tires on it, though.
No. No. For sure not. I can tell you 100% for sure not.
We can work around that.
What-
It's your phone.
Okay.
Daniel is calling.
Oh, Daniel, that's perfect.
Which Daniel?
Marshall.
Okay, he's calling. I call you back. Okay, now you can explain it. Hello.
Oi, brother.
Hello, mate.
Just put it next to the microphone. Yeah.
The point I was trying to make was that you can have, as Emilio calls them, Lego shocks, and you can set the shock up with a shock length. That means that you're more likely to smash into the arch, for example. But you don't actually get the whole travel out of it, regardless of the actual damper travel in the cartridge, because you've made the shock too short, for example. And that was my comment around how Zetas installed with effectively any position are going to just kiss the top of the wheel arch or something to that effect, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, yeah, so part of choosing the correct shock length for a given application is doing all those measurements, checking to maximize bump travel, and then once we maximize bump travel, then we get as much droop travel as we can. So, yeah, with multi-piece shocks, you often can adjust them so that a set of multi-piece shocks that we benchmark against Tecna when we were designing Tecna, out of the box, we put them on the car, and the tires just hit the fenders. Like, would stop the tire, they hit the fenders so hard, and that's how they came out of the box. So we had to set them up, and after we set them up, they worked okay. The Tecna still outperformed them, but they do require that extra setup step.
So, like, coming back to the point you made earlier about single adjustable versus dual adjustable, and the dual adjustable is more complex and inherently adds a step that, if you're an expert, sure. If you're not, then it's just an additional step that makes you get muddied. It's the same thing with a multi-piece shock. You might be targeting a ride height based on adjusting the length of the total shock, and end up not even getting 80% of the full damper travel is advertised, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Many multi-piece shocks come with instructions that tell you how to set them up incorrectly. They'll tell you to set a specific preload amount, and then they'll tell you to adjust the ride height with the lower collar, which will usually work, but it's not actually the best way to set up those
But
multi-piece
this is like
shocks.
an interesting part because this is something we discuss frontwards and backwards in the office, and it's like you can do it like this, but 99.
It's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, it's like we set the preload to 3 millimeters, which is basically nothing, and then we just adjust the ride height with it to make it perfect. With a multi-piece shock would be you take like a help spring, you have let's say the normal spring, and you dial in with the way how long your damper is, your negative and your positive damper movement or way, and with the ride height adjustment, you just, let's say, set the last 5 millimeters.
Yeah, so that's another way to do it. You can also, what we generally will instruct people to do who are trying to set up multi-piece shocks, don't email us for this, we won't respond. But if we're sitting around and someone asks me, how do I set up my Meisterage correctly? What we'll tell them to do is you remove the spring from the shock install it in the car with your tire on it,
Yeah.
and then you set it up. You compress the shock and then set your shock length for maximum bump travel. Then you've got your shock length set. So that's part of what we do in early Zeta development. How long does a shock damper need to be to allow for maximum bump travel? Most people care more about bump travel than droop travel because you want to run the car as low as you can, right? So the first thing, the most important thing to begin with is bump travel. So you set that shock length without a spring in the car, and then you take it back off, put the spring in, set the ride height using preload.
Yeah.
And then add a helper if you need to,
Yeah.
if you have negative preload.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that's like, that'll generally give you the best performance at lowered ride heights with multi-piece shocks.
Yes, but this is like the biggest problem because 99% of the multi-piece suspensions, they do not come with helper springs.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Most of the time they don't need it.
Yeah. So this is like the point because you have like actually a smaller damper travel. So
Right.
when you do have no helper spring, it's like this is like the thing we were discussing out there, and I just explained completely the same thing. I think it's not a multi-piece shock. Is 99% I would say not bad, but especially on the MX-5 when it comes down to the rear,
Yes.
there the multi-piece shock is the problem.
Yeah.
So
Because you one of the biggest challenges with the Miata, and we run into this problem with Zetas too. It's a challenge with the Zetas is having sufficient oil and nitrogen volume for the stroke. When that shaft goes into the damper body, it's displacing that volume, and so you have to have enough nitrogen volume that it can compress and get out of the way of the damper of the shaft, right? So if you have a little tiny cartridge, you can have a shock shaft that's going, but there's not enough nitrogen volume in there, and it'll start to cavitate. You'll have hysteresis where the valving is different every time the shock cycles. So with such a short damper body in the back of NA and Bs, it's really a challenge to balance stroke with your oil and nitrogen
why
volume.
did you
and
not
have it.
make like a top hat which goes more in?
Great question. Amelia would have to answer that one.
Okay, because this is something I was like, I don't know which was the first company which made it, like from the multi-piece shock guys, but they just made a really long
So
top hat.
I can actually definitely answer part of that problem. The other problem in the rear isn't just the amount of space you have for a shock, but the amount of space that you have for a spring. With 103 millimeters of stroke that we have in NA and B Zeta race in the rear, we already have a hard time fitting a long enough spring pack to offer a large ride height adjustment range without the spring pack hitting the axle. If you put a longer damper on that goes into a extended top mount, that doesn't give you any more room for the spring. So you now have more stroke that you have to sort out with a spring pack, and you don't have any more room for that spring pack. So that's probably, I would imagine, that's probably a big reason why we never did that. I wasn't around. I wasn't at 949 when we designed the length of Zeta race. But even if we had a longer shock with more stroke, there's not enough room for a good spring pack to handle it.
That's something we actually did on the NAMB Tecna, is that we have a lower offset perch.
Yeah, the lower mount on Tecna moves the shock away from the axle,
Yeah.
so that there's more room for the spring
Yeah.
to come down.
So
more.
now
Yeah,
you have
so like-
more.
Because the Tecnas in the rear have 120 millistroke.
So
Okay.
you have more travel, but the cars are set up to run a little bit higher because the Tecna is for more of a GT and a sport customer, and they do really well on track, but it's not set up to be like a competition shock. So they're riding a little bit higher ride heights than you would if you were trying to go for the fastest lap times possible.
And if anybody asks, well, why didn't you do that with NA and B Zeta, the offset mount? We tried. We worked with Tractive. Due to the design of the piston and the mount, we weren't able to get an offset lower mount that worked. So we stuck with the current design.
That's really cool. It's like when it's like, just to give us a little bit of recipes how you set up your stuff.
Yeah.
So it comes down really interesting. But there's also another interesting part, which I'm discussing with some of our customers. When you go wider tires, which are more sticky, you change the spring rate of the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Like,
this is
you mean we recommend changing the spring rate? Yeah.
Yeah, because this is something we also talk to our customers. Say, hey, when you let's say run 275 millimeters of semi-slick tires, like an AR1 or something, you definitely cannot go, let's say, with a 12 and a 7 kilo spring.
It's not enough.
Yeah. So because you will be so sticky that your body will again start to move.
You're just gonna be on the bump stops.
Yeah.
You'll turn just like a stock Miata, right? With the 95-pound front
Yeah.
springs and a stock 1.6. You turn the wheel, it flops over onto the bump stops and just stays there.
Then if you hit a bump,
And
in
as
the
long as
corner-
you don't hit a bump, that's fine. But
Yeah.
as soon as you hit a bump, the car just bounces.
You know, in autocross,
Same
it's
problem.
probably okay in a flat, clean
On a smooth
autocross
autocross
parking
course,
lot,
yeah.
but on the Nordschleife, and you track out on the bump stops and hit the curb.
Okay, Emilio said I was right about why we didn't do the
This
extended
morning,
routes
huh?
on any
Okay.
of these.
Tomorrow I'm not here.
Oh, Daniel, did you want to hang up, or are you enjoying this?
I'll leave you to it. I just wanted to spark that part of the conversation.
I'm sorry,
Because
dude.
the thing about it is that you know you were talking about putting something on that's got the damper that's organised properly, but you weren't talking about the fact that you are using all of the space
Right.
in the wheel well.
Friday.
But yeah, anyway, cool. I'll be on YouTube. I'll follow that way. But yeah, nice one, guys.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you, Daniel. See you later.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Love you.
So, what would you recommend for going? How should I explain it? So you also started to investigate really early into the I think the wheel game, where actually about I would say, especially in Germany, are more proud of the wheels. So a lot of people just know the 949 sexual wheel. So they say, yeah, this is like the wheel for the Miata.
6UL.
Yes, sexual.
It sounds better in German than in English.
It does. It does.
Sexual
6UL.
healing.
We're doing that after the show.
Okay.
Why did we invite? Like, should we?
You guys are being boring talking about too much spring rate and stuff.
I think nobody can follow the conversation.
I think they can.
For me, it's hard.
No.
No,
it's
for
not.
me it's hard because it's so much input. Like
No, it's really
Yeah,
interesting.
this is why I'm here.
A slow amount of time.
Yeah, put the camera on this guy. He's
No, it's. I think it's
No,
like
it's just
the basic idea. You know, it's like it's really interesting because when I would start to talk about ignition setups or let's say piston things or like
My eyes will glaze over. I don't even know.
So, or which cams I would use and whatever. So it would be probably the same amount of information. But for me, the interesting part on this whole story is like you made something which is really working. You drove something which I say works okay. Like the NC works pretty fine, I would say. But you just came off the car and said, because I know the ND is really snappy, but you just came out of the car and said, we can make that better. So, and what I like is like...
And the NC has Ohlins on it.
Yeah.
That was my my personal first experience with an NC on Ohlins on track.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've driven them on the street. This is something that I've told customers when they ask, and Ohlins versus Zeta. Ohlins makes a great shock. The damping is lovely. It's excellent quality. Really good shock. The problem is, that, especially when things get bumpy, they just don't have enough stroke. Coming out of the carousel, I wanted to get on the throttle sooner, but as I come over the crest, it comes off the ground. And there were so many places where you get these little rises, you feel the shocks top out. The second those shocks top out, the contact patch grip changes, and the car, you can't drive it as hard. If you have a little bit that additional travel, and the difference in travel between the Ohlins and Zeta is monumental. It's like it's almost double the travel in the rear of the NC. So that's why, I mean, and to do that, we had to invert the shock and do the crazy mounts and all that stuff. But it pays off because the whole purpose of a shock is to keep the contact patch consistent, right? If that contact patch is consistent, the grip is consistent, and the car is predictable, and you can push it harder. There were several times where I knew I could see the pavement doing this, and I knew I would have to be that much more careful because that contact patch is going to change because there's just not enough stroke. The Nordschleife especially is so bumpy.
Yeah. I'm just trying not to get hit, so I'm always with my right blinker on, just hanging out on the right.
But yeah,
brakes are
the
good.
valving felt great, but you could definitely feel those limitations. And that car was great, but it's like,
So
there's
what
room.
you when it comes down to let's say tire and wheels, what do you say is the right tire for let's say like an 8-inch wheel? Because there's also like a constantly, let's say, argumentation thing. Like who of you guys drove with Danny?
Unfortunately, I don't think either of us got to experience Danny.
Yeah.
I'm such a
I
terrible
got the
passenger,
Leonard
man.
treatment, and he was incredible. So
Yeah, it's like Danny is like
It's even more fucked
yeah.
up, even faster.
like as slow as he is responses in his normal
He doesn't
way,
like that statement. You guys will have to talk about that later.
No, no.
Um,
I say it because
as he's really fast on track. So the interesting part is we are always discussing, because I say we do not need 245 millimeters of tire on a, let's say, 200 horsepower car, and he's like, no, you always need grip. And I say, I just normally come from the point to say I just need the tire as wide as I need, as long as I have grip. So let's say on a 200 horsepower car, a 205 mil or 225 mil is good. Danny is completely opposite way.
The answer, as usual, is it depends.
Okay.
It depends on the track.
Yeah.
It depends on the car. The power absolutely matters.
Yeah.
But what's the track like? Like, for example, in the Nordschleife, if it's BTG versus a full lap,
Yeah.
that may determine the difference, because that straight is so long. So in our Supermiata racing series that we did from 2015 to 2021 or whatever it was, the S2 cars were 140 wheel horsepower, 2,300 pounds. So 2,300 pounds is what, about? I'm so bad at kilos. Not a lot.
900.
Can they reach 900 now?
What's 2,300 divided by 2.2?
I mean, my car is 863, so
1043 kilos.
Okay. And
That was way
140 wheel horsepower. When the series started, they were on 205s, and we changed them to 225s. The cars were faster on the tracks that we were on. Now, would they have been faster on the Nordschleife? Probably not, because there's so much more wide open, high speed. You know, the average speed on the Nordschleife is going to be much higher than at Buttonwillow or Chuckwalla Valley Raceway.
my car's faster with 95 horsepower on 8s than it is on 9s because I can't push 9s.
Yeah.
But if you're making, once you start hitting 200 plus horsepower, you can push 9s okay, I would say, in general. But again, like I said, it depends.
And what do you think is the faster tire? Because you said like you run on 10-inch 245s,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't think it's too much stretched?
No, if anything, it could use more. Generally, you want those sidewalls to have tension on them. You can overdo it a little bit without hurting tire performance. We're starting to see people develop this even more. You know, we've always recommended 245s on 10s, but we've seen people on NCs with 17s going from a 17 by 9 with a 225 and putting that 225 on a 10 and going faster.
Okay,
Back
but
to back.
What is the reason?
Same tire. More tension on the tire, the contact patch. So it goes back to that, what I was talking about with the contact patch being consistent. If the contact patch is squirming around, it's less consistent. If it's stabilized, it'll be more consistent. You can push the car harder. It'll make more grip.
But the limit is tighter.
What?
The limit is tighter.
Yeah.
Because I'm running really thick sidewalls on my car.
Mm-hmm. It looks cool.
Yeah. It's so and so. I thought it's like when it's
Yeah, the wrong size tire.
Yeah. But it has to be with the body kit. So
It
I
looks
would-
so good, man.
Yeah.
I don't blame you one bit.
Yeah, I would definitely not remove it. So I can tell you,
That's fine.
it's one thing that has to stay. But I had the feeling when I'm driving a car with this big tire, it feels more, let's say, it's a bit relaxeder than it's snippy.
Mhm.
So on a, let's say, MX-5 with 200 horsepower, what would be your recommendation? Let's say Lennart's car. It's 240 horsepower.
Like the tire now, so.
Yeah.
I think 245.
So Sonny just commented that a 15 by 9 inch 225 millimeter width is technically beneficial for even 125.
Yeah, but again, that's going to depend on the track. I don't think on the Nordschleife that would be true.
Yeah, because I get it has like a mile long straight.
Right. But
Whatever
on
that
a-
is in
on an
kilometers.
autocross track, your car would be faster on 10s and 245s
Yeah,
than it is on 8s.
because
So it just depends. With his car, you're 260 wheel horsepower,
No, 240.
240.
No, wheel horsepower is
Yeah.
200.
240 German
I would assume, like my instinct would be that it would be faster with the wider tire,
400
even on the
American
Nordschleife. I think
horsepower.
you have enough power to push it. There's also, you also have offset and aero drag, right? So if you just take a stock body NB and bolt 15 by 12s on it that are sticking this far out the side of the car, it's not going to go faster. But if you
For
build
sure,
an air
because
dam,
you get pulled over by the police and you get.
yeah, then it's really slow.
Yeah.
On the back of a flatbread,
Yeah.
that's very slow. But if you build a front air dam that guides air around those giant tires, they suddenly become more viable. So there's so many variables. There's not really a way to say. And generally, the way that I do things when I'm consulting with customers, I don't generally go into like people coming in and saying, you know, Emilio wants to talk about the tire question. You want to call him?
Yeah, just call him.
Why are you guys getting everything but me?
I don't know. Let's use your phone to call him.
Oh,
WhatsApp?
You call him.
What's it?
Yeah, call him on WhatsApp because
What's that?
What's it? Hello.
25 cents a minute if I call you.
Hast du what's it?
But yeah, I generally stay away from telling people what size to run. I let them
It's
tell
like,
me what they want to
Do
run.
you know what my
then we set
every
up the
second
suspension for that.
question on an email is which is the right size for my car?
Yeah.
Always.
The fastest.
The fastest one.
Yeah, but like they. Okay, I love people which they call me to do an answer.
He'll answer.
This is the way.
Yeah, I know.
There we go. Sorry about that.
There he is.
He's a boomer. It's okay. But when he lacks in phone calls, he makes up for in suspension brains. So
Can everybody hear Emilio?
Yes, I gotta see if I can.
you can put it over there by Jan
Just
too.
ask in the chat, please.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear perfectly?
We can hear you.
There we go. So the tire thing, I'll try to simplify it. It has to do, from a performance standpoint. So this gets a little bit nerdy. Radial tires are going to develop their most grip when they have a little bit of slip angle. So if the tire's rolling straight and you put lateral force on it, it develops X. When it's sliding a little bit, it develops.
Okay, got it.
I think we lost him.
Did we lose you? Did you hit the mute button, Emilio?
No, I'm here. I can hear myself talking, but
Oh.
hang on a second.
Okay, so in a straight line, I can hear you now. In a straight line, it develops X.
Okay, so I have a little delay, so I'm gonna have to go mute myself. So I can't listen to you guys, unfortunately, because of the time lag. So anyway, when the tire's sliding a little bit, it's when it develops its peak cornering force. So what you're trying to do, if grip and performance is most important, is you have to keep the tire sliding a little bit, 1 to 2% straight line. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to keep talking because if I listen to you, I get a time lag, and
Shut
it's
off,
like 10
shut
seconds.
off the video and just go through the phone. Then we can talk.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I shut off the video.
Okay.
Anyways,
We can hear you. Go ahead.
So okay, video shut off. Sorry about that. So anyway, essentially, we want to keep the tire sliding, and if you notice this in an NA6, for example, in a long, fast sweeping turn, you can get to a point where you have so much grip that you're full throttle and the car's not accelerating. So that's a place where the torque is not overcoming the tire drag. So the tire, when it's turning, it develops more drag, but that's also when it develops the most grip. So what you're trying to do is have enough torque to slide the tire, because that's when it develops its most grip. The more torque you have, the bigger tire you can run, but you have to be sliding the tire. If you have so much tire that you can't slide it, you have too much tire. So it is possible, and we've all done this. Have an A6, for example, you put 225s on it, say, and you're in a fast sweeping turn, and you're floored, and it's actually bogging down. As soon as you straighten the wheel, it actually starts slowly picking up speed. That's a place where you have more grip than you have torque. So essentially, what you're doing is matching the available torque to the grip level and trying to keep the tire sliding. Now, the other kind of three-dimensional chess side of this is if it's for racing, you have to look at where the most time is gained. The most time on a racetrack is always gained on the fast turns, not the slow turns. You always throw away the slow turns, optimize for the fastest turns on the track, because that's where the most time is gained. And then you kind of work your way back in terms of tuning down to see if you can get the slow turns to be halfway decent as well. So if you have a track that's got, let's say, a 50 kilometer turn, 100 kilometer turn, and 150 kilometer per hour turn, you focus on the 150, and then you choose a tire that's going to match your power level so that you can slide it. So it becomes very complicated because you can change your grip level and your sliding by how well your suspension's tuned, your roll stiffness, your air pressures. So it becomes very complicated. But in a simple term, for performance, it's about matching the available torque in the car for the fastest turns that you're going to be running on, and being able to keep that tire sliding. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, got it. So, just as a basic idea, what would be your setup on a car which has 200 horsepower to the wheels, not really aero, just the wing in the back, to perform well?
So I have to. Sorry about the time lag here. It's going to be, again, you have to test it.
Okay.
You've got to put the tire on the car, go out and look at your data and drive it and say, look at my tire temperatures. One way to tell that your tires are sliding is by sticking a pyrometer on there and you're getting them up to their optimum temperature. For a Super 200 tire, that's typically going to be around 160 to 190 degrees. That's a tire that a lot of people would run. That's Fahrenheit. So in looking at maybe, I'm not sure, I think it's like 80 to 90 C or something like that. I'm not sure what it is in Celsius. But that's essentially what you'd look at. If the tires aren't sliding, they're not generating heat. If they're generating heat, they're getting up into their optimum range, and you can feel by driving it, the car sliding a little bit. You're like, okay, I'm using all the tire. Now, if you get to the point where you're sliding the tires even at low speed, you have so much torque that you can slide the tires at any speed, and you can't accelerate through the turn, then you say, okay, I need more tire. Then you keep adding more tire up to the point where, like, okay, now I'm starting to bog down. So a common thing here in the United States, what we call autocross, it's like slalom racing. That's the low speed, and the speeds are generally below about 110 kilometers an hour. It's very slow, low speed. It's a 1 minute run, and something like that. Every car generally has enough torque to overwhelm the tires because the speeds are so slower. So in that situation, you run basically the biggest possible tire. And that same tire on a road course would be much too big at double the speed. But at half the speed, the lower you go because of torque multiplication, the lower gear ratios in a car, you can get away with having, air quotes here, too big of tire. That's why a fast autocross car might only have 120 horsepower, but have a giant 275 millimeter tire. But that same combination on a road course would be terribly slow, would be much faster on a 205, for example. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, generally.
Ask a question.
What was that?
Philip just asked a question. So what about my 275 on my 10 by 15?
With what? With what power and what track?
It's 450 horsepower, 1.6.
Cool. It's probably great. And I mean, so generally, that's the answer, is you have to test it. Generally, on most road courses, most Miatas, 200 horsepower is plenty to push a 15 by 9, and plenty probably to push a 15 by 10, unless it's a really open track.
One question, because this is like something I would be interested in, because we're just discussing this frontwards and backwards all the time. Emilio, did you test 16 inches on the ND?
He's got a delay.
Okay, sorry, I got to switch off. 16-inch on the ND. We haven't. On a road course, they're definitely going to be slower. Actually, our next thing that we're going to test is 18 inches on the ND, because all of my knowledge and experience and the data I've been able to collect shows that that's actually going to be faster. A lot of people are not going to like the way it looks, but it's definitely going to be faster. 16 might be faster for autocross strictly because of the gearing allowed with the shorter tire.
Okay.
What's the reasoning behind that? Like the diameter benefit? I think I know, but you'll explain it a lot better than I can.
That's going to be the gearing is shorter, so if you're not running the automatic rear diff ratio in your ND, if you're running the standard manual, it's really tall gearing. And for autocross, you basically fall off the power band. So running a shorter tire allows you to basically run an autocross course in third gear instead of second, and it's a little bit a better acceleration.
But I mean,
it's
like, in terms
a
of
big compromise for people who want to run on the street, obviously, because the car's really low.
in terms of anticipating, in terms of moving to an 18 instead of a 17, is that based on what we found with Blub?
It's a combination of things. Generally, the shorter the tire the sidewall is, the better it's going to respond, and the easier it is to control it. So one of the things that people don't realize when you're driving in a straight line, the contact patch is right underneath the wheels and it's squared. When you turn the wheel for a moment, the wheel is moving, but the contact patch isn't. There's a bit of a lag time there.
And
Anybody who's driven a truck with a tall sidewall knows, there's that mushiness where you're turning the wheel and nothing's happening. That's because the contact patch is kind of staying put and the tire's flexing. As the sidewall becomes shorter and shorter, that contact patch moves more in lockstep with the wheel, and it also maintains its shape. It's really critical to have even contact patch loading. So short version is that's why low profile tires are faster on race cars. And the lower profile you get, the better you can control that contact patch. And additionally, as it pertains to the ND, there is a few tires available that are 225, 35, 18, which end up being just slightly narrower than a 245, but not 20 millimeters narrower. They're like 8 millimeters narrower. So they'll actually have better tread support by being put on a 9-inch wheel, and then you have better contact patch support. So, and it should be a lighter combination as well. So it's going to look a little odd, but it should be faster. We'll find out in testing. We're going to build some test wheels and put it together and do some back-to-back testing and see what happens.
Good. This is interesting because we tested 16-inch to 17-inch, and on a track like Nordschleife, where it's really fast, the 17-inch wheel is faster, but on the track which is kind of small, like Arnaud in
really
France,
small.
like France is like 3.5 kilometers or something, and it's faster the 16-inch, and it was like a back-to-back test. So we just tires removed, and it was basically completely the same tire. With the AR1 in 225 45 16, and the AR1 in 235 40 17, 9-inch, 8-inch.
And
that could be because of the tire diameter. If the gearing changes at all, that's going to change something. Another factor there is if you have a suspension that's not working well, if the car's bouncing around and it's hard to drive, where you're having to make a lot of steering corrections, it's typical. That taller sidewall is going to act like your suspension. It's kind of a band-aid. It's not the right way to do it, but it allows the tire to track over rough surfaces when the suspension isn't able to keep up. When you have a suspension that can keep up, then you want more control, then you want that shorter sidewall. So there's some other variables in there that can take your testing data and kind of muddy it a little bit. So it's important to have, make sure that your suspension is working properly and you're not getting a suspension that is maybe not kind of difficult to drive, and it becomes easier to drive when you have a mushier tire. And that's something we see a lot with all the Miatas, is that by putting a mushier setup on it or a narrower wheel that allows more flex, it makes it easier to drive, and it sort of masks the fact that actually your suspension is just not working properly. So that's another possibility. But then there's also the gearing factor. So it's testing is time consuming. It costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time.
And that I imagine that the results of that test could vary depending on which track you're on as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's weather. This is half of the fun that I had racing was, the weather could be different. You can have a setup on a track that works really great in January, and you go back in June and your car's shit basically because the weather's changed, or here it happens in California. We have a lot of kind of medium maintained tracks where they'll put that slurry coat on the top of it, and it adds a bunch of grip and nothing else changed, and then your car balance changes. So yeah, testing is it's a bit of a black art.
Your testing was same day.
Yes.
And it was ABA or just AB?
No, AB, AB, AB.
Okay, so you went back and forth.
So we went back and forth.
And
6
it was
times.
16 by 8 versus 17 by 9.
Yes.
And 225 versus 235.
Yes.
So the 17s were wider than the 16s.
Yes.
Okay. It could be a power, but yet on a faster track on the Nordschleife, the 17s were faster.
Yes, definitely. The thing is, it made the car way handle easier.
Which tire was easier to handle?
The 16.
16?
No, the 17s. You had way more grip. The car was
But the 16 turned a faster lap time.
No, it was like really impossible to drive with the 16s.
Wait, I thought you were saying the 16s were better.
Yes,
on the small track.
On the small
On
track.
a small track.
Yes, on Nordschleife it was totally different. It was like as wide the tire is on the ND, it's more stable the car is. But I'm with Emilio because I think the car was never set it up on the perfect suspension. It's like,
Don't know.
yeah. So
Might
this
have to
like,
do it again when we're
Same-
doing Amelia
same-
and Sunny out.
Same compound?
yes, same compound, both CRS.
Oh, okay.
No, both
Yeah,
AR1.
it's hard to say.
No,
They
both.
said AR1.
No,
Some of
that was
some
in
of your
France.
results make sense, and some of it seems counterintuitive. But it's difficult. If you only do one test, sometimes all it does is teach you that your test was off a little bit. Then you have to go back and create another control. You know, I'm always talking about controls. You know, what did we control in that? Like in this case, you had 2 different wheel widths and 2 different tire widths, and like the diameters were different. So
Another thing that can be a
some of the
factor
data.
is tires can be constructed differently depending on the size,
Yeah. They
which
have
is another
different
another
tire
wild
sizes
card.
can sometimes have different compounds, even though it's the same.
So
AR52.
it was like one time we tested with AR1s. This was in France, and then on Nordschleife we tested with AR52. So, but it was basically the same because I said okay because like Danny is always saying go wider, go wider, go wider, and I said no. Just keep it with the 16 inches because you have less mass. You know what I mean? So low rotating mass.
But with the 255, the car was really nice. I think the
Never tune with mass.
road.
What, Danny?
Danny,
Yeah.
255 4017 is a train on rails.
Now I'm not
Yeah.
getting the chat updates.
Yeah, the mass is always the last thing you should do. It's never going to make a difference. If I had a choice between adding 0.1 G of grip or the cost of, let's say, 2 kilos of mass, I will take that 0.1 G of grip every day. Grip always trumps mass. I know a lot of people focus on mass first. So like, I want to shop for the lightest wheel, regardless of what size it is, and shop for that first and then just figure out a way to make it work, which is completely backwards. Always focus on getting the suspension to work and getting the grip to work. Once that's done and you know what size you need, then try to find the lightest wheel. But choosing a wheel and tire setup that's a different size wheel, different width, different offsets, because one is a pound lighter or 2 kilos lighter or whatever, that's really backwards. Always focus on getting the function correct first, and then once you dial in on your size, then go, okay, now how much can I afford on making my wheels lighter? You know, getting some forged wheels or something like that. But grip always trips, and even in autocross, where weight is more important than it is on a road course because of the low speed acceleration rates are different. The rate of speed change is higher. So even there, weight matters, but even there, they always do grip. You look your fastest autocross cars in the United States, they look like clown cars because they have giant wheels that stick out into the wind.
They look hilarious.
They look hilarious, but that's what's fastest, and they're not doing it for weight. They're doing wheels and tires that are much heavier than stock, but that's what's fast because they're focusing on grip first. So, again, weight matters, but it's always last on the list.
Okay, because that's interesting. So because we had just had, I think in the morning today we had the discussion about it. Because I like also the look of 16s on the car, and I said
look
okay,
cool.
yeah, and that we were discussing frontwards and backwards, and Danny is racing 16s now, and the Italians started now to go for 16s because they were also always with the 17s, and yeah, we just, you know, it's like always discussing that. So it's like I thought, okay, what is your recommended tire size? What are you doing on the ND at the moment? So just to have an idea where you are focusing at.
Yeah, right now we're doing 17s and 18 or 17s, 8s and 9s, but yeah, we'll keep testing, see what we find.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
We do actually plan on doing 16s because they, like you said, they look hot. I mean, you can't escape it. You get a good 16 setup on an ND, they look killer. And there's other markets other applications where a 16 will work, so it makes sense for us to do a 16. It's not a big priority, you know. Ed will tell you. I mean, it's down the list of our, you know, for wheels we want to develop. But we do actually plan on doing 16s for the ND. But it'll probably be, I don't know what, Ed. You think probably mid 26 or something like that?
I think it would be unwise to state any
It's
sort
whenever
of
Jan
ETA.
places an order. When Jan places an order, we'll make them.
Why you send me the picture?
huh?
You sent me a picture?
You should drop it into the chat.
I can just
I don't think you can you?
Yeah, you can.
I can show.
Wait,
You can
but I can't
control
see it.
everything because he controls the camera. So
Yeah, I've got the video feed muted, but the WhatsApp is no lag. So you guys are doing visibly not connected to it, but that's okay.
yeah, he
I'm
wanted.
not sure what I'm looking at with that picture.
Yeah, I do not know why he's showing it, but I think is this the 2 to No, this is his
And
car.
this is what
Well, that's the
Andy
six-
sent you.
Yeah, but
Ah.
he's just sent me the picture. This is his car with the 16 inches. So yeah, this will be really interesting because I'm not sure if we ever dialed in ND perfectly.
I don't know
Just-
if we have either.
Yeah, it's just
We're
like
still
you
working
know,
on it.
Yeah, so this is like the interesting part of it. So you get to see where the differences are. On we probably have to check which track we would use just for testing it because Nordschleife is like not the best test.
It's really hard to be consistent, especially on tourist days.
Yeah, it's like I would say like people like Danny because they do so much laps with their cars. They
Only
have really
full
good
30,
feeling.
40 laps.
It's like this. He was like, yes, as always. I was asking him once, how many laps you did this year, and he was like, 10. I said today you did 10.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think the Nordschleife is I think it's valid in a couple sense. One, it is bumpy, and if you go in the spring, a lot of times you have temperature differences too on the surface where it's the sun is hitting one part and then it's in the shade somewhere else. So that's like it's valid for like not for racetrack as much as I think canyon roads, because I think to me it's more like a really fast kind of sketchy canyon road than it is a racetrack. Because a racetrack is a little bit more controlled environment, tend to be a little smoother, and you know. On the north side, especially on a tourist day, you're going maybe close to the limit in one area and way below the limit in another area. Whereas on a racetrack, you know, you can go the limit for 2 laps, come back in, check, do a pyrometer check, recheck the tire temperatures, and they go, okay, let's make a change, and then go right back out again. So I think it's more valid for racetrack performance to test on an actual like standard circuit, you know, like the GP course or something like that. But for like more like canyon road type testing, I think the Nordschleife would probably still be really valid because it's so bumpy with the weather changes.
Yeah, I'm stoked for when we can come back out
Yeah.
and do some more testing on
Yeah.
the Nordschleife. This was my first experience. We got to do 2 laps on Sunday, and it was better than I had even hoped, and it's something that I've hoped and dreamt of ever since I was a kid to come and drive the Nordschleife. So it just blew my mind, and I cannot wait to get out there again on Thursday.
yeah, so it's like I think it comes really interesting to the part. For me, it's like I would like to order it just right away instead of just drop it in my MX-5, like the blue one, because yeah, it's like everybody's saying me my car's jumping around the corner. So you saw it, yeah.
And this is why Leonard's girlfriend yells at you. You're trying to kill him.
No, I was sitting in the car and I was like, he was like asking me, say, hey, did you see that your car's jumping around the corner? I said, oh no, or did you have the feeling that your car's jumping around the corner? I said, oh no, I don't give a fuck. Yeah.
That's like me. I'll drive something and I'm like, I'm just driving it, and Emilio will get in. It's like, this thing sucks. It's like, I don't know. It felt okay to me.
Yeah. So this is like really an interesting part.
It's gonna be
of it.
fun, man.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a
definitely.
party.
Definitely. So Emilio, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for hosting our crew there. I look
That's-
forward to being out there next year.
Absolutely. That's one more thing that I didn't really say yet. Like, thank you
No, it's
for
like,
this.
absolutely
Like
happy for it.
this has been, you've been an incredible host. This event has been amazing, and your generosity and of your whole crew has just been so incredible. This is an experience that has exceeded expectations, and I'm so grateful for you and for all of you guys.
The
And
community was
I can't-
incredible. All
can't
the
wait to come
helpers
back.
that came out, those guys were all so nice to us and super helpful, and just like you guys, I mean, are an incredible shop, but you couldn't have done it without all the, having me out of a community that stands behind you here in Germany and Europe in general. So it's just,
Yeah, it would be impossible. This is
Good
what
vibes,
I
man.
explained. If we do not have that community in our back, we're just buying our stuff and paying the bills and stuff.
and coming from far away, like
Yeah.
a lot of these people weren't
We could not
local.
believe, Emilio, the turnout for this opener was incredible. Like, how many people came for SPS? Like, one shop. If we did something like that, we'd have like 12 people.
It's,
No, it would be not like
yeah,
that.
it's very clear that SPS gets a lot of love, and for good reason. I mean, they give so much back, and they're so involved. And I think it's great for the culture there to have like a center for the Miataverse there. So I'm really looking forward to visiting next year and being a part of that. I'm kind of jealous of you guys being there. But we went to the Nürburgring in 13 and 14, a group of us. And we had a blast, for ring and all that, and went to did the spa too. So next year, yeah, we're there.
And we're gonna try to get these guys to come out, and we'll put them in our NDs, and they can decide if we're full of bullshit or not once they drive them.
We're definitely full of shit.
Yeah.
No, it's it's like as Jan alluded to, always learning. I don't ever get the feeling like, okay, that's done. I'm done developing on that car. I can always like look at it and say, I wonder if let's try this. Let's experiment with this. There's you have to have the approach if you're always learning and able to learn more and willing to learn more. So the cars will be a little bit different next year, and the year after that they'll be a little bit different again.
The NA and NB is still evolving. I mean, look at how far Ryan's taking it,
Yeah.
Like, that's a car that...
Ryan is now, he goes beyond the level. So this is like, when we are building a car here and I say, okay, this is like the masterpiece. And then there's coming the next one. And this is like...
Ryan's is like, when he's done with it, it's going to be the coolest Miata in the world.
Yeah. For a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Until somebody else builds something. Yeah, exactly. Until somebody else
Yeah.
builds something cooler,
Yeah.
right?
Until Jan's child is born.
Until Lucas finishes his build.
Then he will build the next.
Yeah, he will the next. Yeah, it's like always. But it's like I think it was crazy how many people were here, and it was crazy to see you guys in Nordschleife and which ideas we have now to just keep this. Yet to this what we had here to move it on, with the idea about the sim racing stuff which we had. We probably with Lennart and
I don't want
and
to do it
Guido.
if Leonard's racing. He's too fast.
Yeah.
That's
No, we
something
will
we're-
make like an amateur class, and Lennart just can drive by itself.
How about
We'll make sure that it's on automatic mode with the
Yeah.
racing line
Yeah,
on the pavement,
yeah.
I want to be on Leonard's team with Leonard. We'll take Arcangelo from our office and me.
Yeah.
The dream team.
Yeah.
There you go.
They will carry me. I will do one lap, and they will do the rest
Do,
of
do
the...
you think then you are a bit handicapped? But for
Maybe.
Lennart it would be okay, because I think
Not
when
just in
Lennart...
sim racing.
Ja,
Yeah.
ich bin ein bisschen geistig behindert.
Okay, but if Lennart would be raced with us in the sim racing thing, I think he's just allowed to use one arm, and he has just the
display.
yes, and he just can use the left one.
And he has to have
And
the
you have to
doll on his
also
lap.
shift like this,
Oh,
because
no.
that's the only
Oh, no.
way. Because he's too fast.
You haven't seen the other live streams.
Yeah.
Maybe he has the doll on his lap when he does the lap.
2 laps at once.
Yeah,
All right, it's
yeah.
time for dinner. Let's get out of
Okay.
here.
So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, Emilio, for your time, and thank you having you two here. And I think this is just like the